Vicar of Christ, Holy Father, successor to Saint Peter, titles dripping with piety, reverence, and moral authority. When you picture a pope, you probably imagine a kindly old man in white robes, blessing crowds, a figure of peace and wisdom, right? Yeah, well, think again. History, if you dig deep enough, reveals a different picture. Turns out, the path to the papal throne hasn't always been paved with prayer and good intentions. Sometimes, it was paved with gold, ambition, family connections, political maneuvering, and occasionally, corpses. Yes, you heard that right, corpses. Today we're peeling back the gilded veneer of the papacy to stare into the abyss of its darkest chapters. We're counting down some of history's absolute worst popes, figures whose reigns were marked by shocking corruption, breathtaking cruelty, and pure, unadulterated chaos. Forget saintly figures, these guys make Machiavelli look like a Boy Scout. Now a quick disclaimer. History is complex. Accounts can be biased, and judging figures from centuries past by modern standards is tricky. But some actions, some reigns, were so demonstrably disastrous, corrupt, or downright bizarre that they've earned a permanent spot in the Papal Hall of Shame. Let's dive in, shall we? Number 6. Pope Stephen VI, reigned 896-897, the Ghoul Pope. We're starting strong, folks, because Stephen VI orchestrated arguably the most gruesome and macabre episode in papal history, the Cadaver Synod. Yep, a synod, featuring a corpse as the defendant. See, Stephen really hated his predecessor, Pope Formosus, like really hated him. Political rivalries, disputed ordinations, the usual 9th century Vatican drama. But Stephen took it to a whole new level. He had Formosus's 9-month-old corpse dug up, dressed in papal vestments, propped up on a throne, and put on trial for perjury and violating canon law. A deacon was apparently appointed to answer for the rotting corpse, presumably while trying not to gag. Unsurprisingly, the dead Formosus was found guilty. His vestments were stripped, the fingers he used for blessings were hacked off, and his body was tossed unceremoniously into the Tiber River. Talk about holding a grudge. This ghastly spectacle horrified even the hardened Romans of the time. It highlighted the intense political factionalism tearing Rome apart, where the papacy was treated like a political football by powerful families. Stephen's reign didn't last long after this stunt, either. The public outrage was so intense that he was imprisoned and later strangled. Karma, perhaps. Number 5. Pope John XII, reigned 955-964, the Teenage Terror. If Stephen VI was about macabre politics, John XII was pure, unadulterated debauchery and incompetence, becoming pope at the tender age of 18. Thanks to his powerful father basically installing him, John treated the papacy less like a holy office and more like his personal frat house crossed with a gangster hideout. Historians of the time and later accused him of an astonishing array of sins. We're talking turning the Lateran Palace into a brothel, gambling with church offerings, invoking pagan gods while rolling dice, blinding his confessor, castrating a cardinal, committing arson, murder. The list goes on. It reads less like papal history and more like a script for a particularly wild season of some prestige cable drama. His reign occurred during a period known as the Saculum Obscurum, or Dark Age of the Papacy, where powerful aristocratic families, particularly the Theophylacti, John's family, controlled papal elections. Moral character wasn't exactly high on the job requirements list. John XII's behavior was so scandalous it actually prompted the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III to march on Rome and have him deposed temporarily at least. How did this party pope meet his end? According to one account, he died from a stroke suffered in flagrante delicto, caught in the act with a married woman. Other accounts say the enraged husband caught them and beat John to death. Either way, not exactly a saintly departure. John XII stands as a stark symbol of the papacy at its absolute moral nadir. Number 4. Pope Benedict IX. Pope 3 times 1032 to 1044, 1045, 1047 to 1048. The papal revolving door. You thought John XII was bad. Meet Benedict IX, the only man to have been pope on 3 separate occasions, and arguably one of the most corrupt. Like John XII, he was installed young. Accounts vary from 12 to 20, thanks to his powerful family, the Counts of Tusculum. His first stint was apparently so scandalous and tyrannical, filled with reports of immorality, violence, and treating the papacy like personal property, that the Romans eventually drove him out of the city. But his family connections were strong, and he managed to get reinstated. Then things got really weird. In 1045, Benedict IX decided he wanted to, well, sell the papacy. Yes, you heard that right. He literally sold the holiest office in Western Christendom to his godfather John Gratian, who became Pope Gregory VI. Why? Some accounts say he wanted to marry, others just point to sheer greed. It was an act of simony, the buying or selling of church offices, so blatant it shocked everyone. But wait, there's more. Benedict apparently regretted his sale, or maybe just wanted power back, and he returned again in 1047 to reclaim the papal throne after Gregory VI was pressured to abdicate, along with another rival claimant. So now we had the guy who sold the papacy back on the throne. It was absolute chaos, further degrading the office's prestige. He was finally driven out for good in 1048. Benedict IX's career exemplifies the papacy treated as a commodity, a political prize to be bought, sold, and fought over by powerful Roman families. His repeated returns and the blatant sale of the office contributed significantly to calls for church reform that would eventually sweep through Europe. You just can't sell the papacy and expect people to respect it. Number 3. Pope Boniface VIII, reigned 1294 to 1303. Peak papal power meets peak resistance. Moving forward a bit, Boniface VIII wasn't known for wild immorality like John or Benedict. His sin? Arrogance. Extreme, world-bending arrogance, and an insistence on absolute papal supremacy over everyone, including kings. He represented the peak, and perhaps the breaking point, of papal claims to temporal power. Boniface famously issued the papal bull Unam Sanctam in 1302, one of the most extreme statements of papal spiritual and temporal authority ever made. It basically declared that being subject to the Pope was absolutely necessary for salvation, and that kings were subordinate to the papal throne. He was essentially telling powerful monarchs like King Philip IV of France, "I'm the boss, deal with it." Philip IV of France, unsurprisingly, was not amused. This kicked off a massive power struggle. Philip needed money and wanted to tax the French clergy. Boniface said absolutely not without papal permission. Tensions escalated, with Boniface planning to excommunicate Philip. Philip's response: he sent troops to confront the Pope at his residence in Anagni. What happened next is legendary: the outrage of Anagni. Philip's envoy, Guillaume de Nogaret, along with Ciara Colonna from a rival Roman family Boniface had crushed, stormed the papal palace and allegedly slapped the elderly Pope Boniface VIII across the face, or at least threatened and roughed him up. Imagine the audacity. Boniface was held captive for a few days before being rescued by locals, but the humiliation was immense. He died just a month later, likely from shock, illness, or perhaps kidney stones exacerbated by the stress. His downfall marked a major turning point, a clear sign that the papacy's absolute claims to power over secular rulers were being forcefully challenged and could no longer be taken for granted. The age of unchallenged papal monarchy was beginning to crack. Number 2. Pope Alexander VI, reigned 1492 to 1503. The Borgia Patriarch. The Borgias. Their name alone conjures images of Renaissance Italy, at its most decadent, ambitious, and ruthless. And sitting at the center of that web was Rodrigo Borgia, who who became Pope Alexander VI. His election itself was widely seen as riddled with simony, buying votes with bribes and promises. Alexander VI wasn't necessarily incompetent as an administrator, but his reign was defined by breathtaking nepotism and the naked pursuit of power and wealth for his family, particularly his ruthless son Cesare Borgia and his infamous daughter Lucrezia Borgia. He used the papacy's political and military power to carve out territories for Cesare, eliminated rivals, sometimes literally, with poison often rumored, and hosted lavish, reportedly debauched banquets. He openly acknowledged his children born before he became pope, but still scandalous, and showered them with church titles and lands. Cesare was made a cardinal, which he later renounced to pursue military conquest, and Alexander used Lucrezia's marriages as political tools. The Vatican under Alexander VI felt less like the heart of Christendom and more like the headquarters of a powerful, ambitious crime family. While some of the wildest rumors about the Borgias, like incest, are likely exaggerated propaganda from their enemies, there's no denying the atmosphere of corruption, political maneuvering, and moral laxity that defined Alexander VI's papacy. He skillfully navigated the complex politics of Italy, but his methods often relied on bribery, betrayal, and warfare, further tarnishing the spiritual image of the office. His death, possibly from malaria, or perhaps poison intended for someone else, ironic, right, marked the beginning of the end for the Borgia family's dominance. Alexander VI remains a symbol of the Renaissance papacy's deep entanglement with worldly power, family ambition, and moral compromise, a far cry from the spiritual ideals the office supposedly represented. Number 1. Pope Leo X reigned 1513 to 1521, the pope who sparked the Reformation. Finally, we reach Leo X, born Giovanni de' Medici, son of Lorenzo the Magnificent. Leo wasn't necessarily cruel or overtly scandalous like some others on this list. His fatal flaw, a combination of lavish spending, political maneuvering, and one truly catastrophic fundraising idea: the mass selling of indulgences. Leo X inherited the project of rebuilding St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, a hugely expensive undertaking. He also lived a life of luxurious patronage of the arts, typical of a Medici prince. He allegedly quipped, "Since God has given us the papacy, let us enjoy it." And enjoy it he did, draining the papal treasury with his extravagant lifestyle and projects. He needed cash, fast. His solution? Authorize a massive campaign selling plenary indulgences across Germany. The pitch, aggressively marketed by preachers like Johann Tetzel, was essentially pay money, get yourself or your dead relatives out of purgatory faster. It was presented as a way to support the St. Peter's project, but to many it looked like the church was selling salvation itself. This blatant commercialization of spiritual matters absolutely enraged a certain German monk and theology professor named Martin Luther. In 1517, Luther posted his famous 95 Theses, challenging the practice of selling indulgences and questioning papal authority. He wasn't trying to break up the church initially, but Leo X and the Vatican hierarchy mishandled the situation spectacularly. Instead of engaging with Luther's theological concerns seriously, Leo X dismissed him as a drunken German and eventually excommunicated him. This heavy-handed approach backfired, galvanizing support for Luther and igniting the Protestant Reformation, a seismic event that shattered the unity of Western Christendom, plunged Europe into centuries of religious conflict, and permanently diminished the Pope's authority. While Leo X might not have been personally monstrous like Stephen Vicks or John XII, his actions, driven by financial need and a failure to grasp the changing religious climate, had arguably the most far-reaching and destructive consequences of any pope on this list. His papacy inadvertently broke the Catholic Church's monopoly on Western Christianity. Oops. The stories of these worst popes are a stark reminder that institutions, even supposedly holy ones, are run by flawed human beings susceptible to greed, ambition, cruelty, and epic misjudgment. Power, as they say, corrupts, and absolute power, well, you know the rest. Who do you think was the worst pope in history? Did we miss any major contenders? Let us know your thoughts down below. And if you enjoyed digging into the dark, weird, and fascinating corners of history, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell